Well, months before the start of the 2022 Winter Games, more than 100 Olympic and Paralympic hopefuls converged in a Swiss village. But this year, some athletes say that their trips also doubled as a lesson or reminder of an issue lingering over their sport as well. For more, let's bring in Richie Merzian from the Australia Institute. Richie, great to have your company on Ticker News as always.
Thanks, Holly.
Talk to us. What concerns do the athletes have?
So, most of the athletes have converged on this Swiss resort of Saas-Fee, and usually this is a safe haven in terms of making sure that they have the conditions just right to be ready for the Winter Olympics. This time, however, they're finding a crumbling glacier, they're finding waterfalls where there should be hard ice, and it's a foreboding sign of what's to come. This is on top of a study recently taken of the last 21 Olympic sites for the Winter Olympics, and it found that if climate change continues on its current pathways, only one of those former sites would be in a position to even be able to host a Winter Olympics towards the end of this century. So it is quite a foreboding, a warning for what's to come for winter sports.
It's a really powerful conversation, and one that we should definitely be having. I mean, how can the Winter Olympics go ahead if there's no snow, there's no ice? It's impossible, right? But I mean, what is that one destination that you were just talking about? Where would be able to host it?
So the only one that would come off scot-free would be Sapporo in Japan. But look, it's not all dire straits, right? This is not inevitable. If there is sufficient global action, then you would see half of those former sites still be able to host a Winter Olympics. So if we do stop new coal mining, stop new gas mining, if we reduce emissions significantly, if we hit that net zero by 2050, then you will see at least half these former sites still be in a position to host a Winter Olympics. Otherwise, you're looking at less than a handful.
Yeah, so what needs to be done here in regards to education, I guess, with the Olympics? As we just mentioned there are athletes here who may not have even thought about the impacts of climate change before until they're experiencing it firsthand.
So for oftentimes athletes and climate change, the two don't usually mix unless there's extreme heat. We saw that in past Australian Opens when we had the bushfires and the really high temperatures, and that was taking down some players in the past. But now it's the same thing on the other side of the spectrum. So it's a useful conversation to have with winter athletes around how we make sure we preserve these beautiful conditions, these beautiful natural surrounds with snow and the ice up in the Alps or in other locations, because ultimately we have to connect that back to the cause. And the cause is fossil fuels. Unless we turn that down, unless we stop mining, unless we reduce our emissions, we won't be able to enjoy these global events that we've come to know and love.
Now talk to us about, you mentioned there briefly, it's a concern for other Olympics too in regards to heat, so on the other end of the spectrum. Has there been much talk about that or much going to change that within the Olympics? Talk to us about that as well, not just the Winter Olympics, but the other Olympics as well.
Yeah, look, it's a serious concern for all sports that have outdoor components. It'll be a concern for Brisbane when it hosts the Summer Olympics in 2032 as well. The same thing happened in Qatar when they hosted with the Soccer World Cup and the need to build air-conditioned stadiums. So this is a serious concern and a serious cost for the sporting industry, and it's one that needs to be factored in along with all the other costs that we traditionally are aware of in tourism, in outdoor construction, in a variety of other industries that tend to be at the coalface, agriculture, but it's so too with the sport industry as well. And it'd be great to see the sport industry play a bigger role in this space.
Yeah, it's really about having transparency and I guess communication between and mixing the two with sport and what our climate impacts are at the moment as well. Richie Merzian, thank you.
Pleasure.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.